This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I am your host, Christina Barr, and we're going to be talking about this super fascinating, almost unbelievable interview that Sam Harris is a intellectual. They say he debates people all the time. Has been upheld in such a high regard with folks, but this amount of TDS is pretty remarkable, and he just can't see himself. And but he is a very famous atheist as well. Was like kind of part of the wasn't kind of when the intellectual dark web was around, which he said in this interview that he thought it was kind of more tongue in cheek. He was a part of that group, but he gave an interview on YouTube, and he was asked about Trump and Hunter Biden, and he just laid all his cards on the table with how far he's sort of willing to go with Trump is bad, therefore it's okay to do bad things, immoral things, I guess, to stop a more immoral monster. And some of those things he says are so bizarre. So I just, when I saw it, I'm like, I have to share this. We have to talk about it. Also, Planned Parenthood is preparing to spend, according to the AP, $50 million in the midterm elections, which is a lot of money. And it's pretty amazing because they're always like, we need to fund Planned Parenthood. How dare you not fund Planned Parenthood? They do so much besides abortions. Yeah, I'm sure they made that much money to just give out $50 million in the midterms because I know all the cancer screenings and condoms they gave out. Yeah, right. It's an abortion factory. Let's be for real about it. And they want to protect their business. I understand that, but they are actually evil. This organization and what they do. So we're going to be talking about that. Also, Brian Stelter is out at CNN. And we reported that there were rumblings about that it seemed pretty inevitable that he was going to be pushed out. But he's gone, which is pretty remarkable. So, happy days. Happy days. Certainly not for him, but he's been part of the CNN machine of just dishonest sort of coverage and hackery, and the new people who own CNN, they're trying to go in a different direction. They're trying to build trust. The Cuomo situation, which they were like, Stelter has to know a bit about that, but also, they saw him as like kind of Zucker's lapdog, and they wanted to kind of purge CNN of this super partisan appearance. And Stelter is like a part of that, and it's been reported that people have seen him as being a part of that. So he's gone. They're getting rid of his show, and I guess he's not doing anything else, so he's just gonna be gone. So we're talking about all that. Before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com. Check out so what Brian Stelter is not the one who got caught on the Zoom call. That was Tubin, but Tubin is leaving as well. He's going on vacation and he's not coming back. So I wonder if they were like, man, you got to go. Whereas people are still making lube jokes. You got to go. So he's out too. So they are doing a major sort of shakeup at CNN with some, of course, Chris Cuomo has been gone for some time. He's been trying to do podcasts, but it hasn't been working out. CNN is they're trying. They're trying. I don't know if they'll be able to claw their way up and get some sort of credibility with people, but they're trying a bit. They're trying. Anyway, before we jump into all these stories, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different articles that I have on my website. I'm trying to get some op-eds published. If they don't get around, I'll just put them on my site. But I've been very, very busy writing. My sister's like, don't stay up too late. And I was like, I'm not young like I used to be. I can't just live off of just 4 hours of sleep and type into the wee hours of the night because I will fall asleep. But I'm trying. I'm trying. Please check out what I have on my website. Please check out different merchandise that we have, like the goat hoodies and goat t-shirts, which I do have them in different colors. I'm not the victim you're looking for. There's the My Money, My Business shirt, because I made that because I got sick of people talking about abortion doesn't affect you, it's none of your business. I'm like, I'm pretty sure my taxpayer dollars are involved. So this is really relative toward the stories that we're going to be talking about today. So you guys can just check out what we have on the website. Also, there's so much to get done between now and the midterms, and especially with this story with, I'm like, obviously Planned Parenthood is going to spend a lot of money in the election, but 50 million. And reading the article and seeing that my state is one of those states that is targeted, there's just so much that I want to get done, that I'm going to get done, that would be better if I just had some more help. So if you guys are willing to support, at least financially, go to blacktnews.com, hit that donate button, and consider leaving a donation today, whether it's $10, $20, $50 or more. God bless you. I really appreciate it. I promise I will put it to good use. And there's a lot of big projects that I'm working on, plan to do. But this, you guys, if you watch my show, you guys know that this is an issue that's really, really near and dear to my heart. I'm very passionate about it. And I'm very passionate about helping others have good counter arguments. While Planned Parenthood is funding a lot of stuff, and they'll have ads and they'll fund people to go on the ground and stuff, but you'll probably see a lot of it in like ad buys and commercials and literature and stuff. People with money in politics are trying to make up the difference in enthusiasm. You being empowered to go talk to people at your church, talk to people at the salon, talk to people when you're in your yoga class, talk to your neighbor, and really press people. Some people are pro-choice and they don't even understand the issues. They haven't really thought things through so much. And maybe they won't get to the point where they're like, no exceptions, or just, life of the mother. Maybe they'll never quite get there. But some of the bills that they're trying to pass, like the thing that they're trying to put on the ballot in Michigan, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad as far as how far it goes, which I'll talk a little bit about that because I was reading about it today. But if you would like to help support Black T News, there's a scripture that says, hey, have not because you ask not. I'm asking if you would be willing to support. I very much appreciate it on Black T News. If you want to also, buy shirts, merchandise, that also helps as well. But if you can't do that, I know inflation is high, in which the Federal Reserve said is not changing anytime soon, regardless of the Reduce Inflation Act that they knew wasn't going to reduce inflation, and they're just passing our monies into subsidies with green crap. That's just the truth of the matter. I understand all that, but I thank you guys for sharing, for watching, for commenting. And when something posts, there's an article or video, you guys sharing that does tremendously help Black T News. So I appreciate all of you, especially all of you who watch live and comment when we do this every day, just about every day. I also want to thank Brian and Michigan Pack. I'm in their studio today. If I say something today that triggers you, they do not care. I do not care. It really does not work like that, but they just like to uplift conservative voices, and I appreciate it. But if I say something today that upsets you, there's no one you can tattle to. It just doesn't work like that. Alrighty, so I do not have a meme today, but I really quickly, before I jump into the Sam Harris thing, I was scrolling, preparing. I just saw this from the RNC put up about Fetterman, who's running in Pennsylvania against Oz. Who we don't love Oz so much, but he is a candidate. And he's spoken about just decriminalizing drugs, period, like hard stuff, like heroin.
I think it's important that we as a society have all the options on the table, including
Was muted.
I think it's important that we as a society have all the options on the table, including needle exchange, which is only technically legal in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and even safe injection sites that are being considered, like, say, in Philadelphia. I'll never forget The meeting that I had down at the DSCC where they, evaluate you and your campaign and your candidacy. And one of the things that I kept talking about was the opioid crisis. And they were just like, wait a second, what are you talking about? Like, you want to legalize heroin?
Yeah, so that was the RNC posted that clip and how it cut off. And I know how like people, these political organizations will cut off things. When they cut off that fast, I'm like suspicious. So I was like, but they did post a link under it from an article from the Daily Wire, and I read up a little bit about it. And yeah, he's like decriminalize drugs across the board because he doesn't see it like a criminal issue. He sees it as a I guess public health crisis, which a lot of people have kind of shifted their mindset toward as far as like the drug crisis. But not everyone goes. People might see that like for marijuana or stuff that doesn't cause like as big a harm as heroin. So that's pretty extreme. I'm not sure if Pennsylvania wants that. RNC also posted a video of a news report and from 2013 when he was the mayor and chased down a black jogger with a shotgun. He's like, I believe I did the right thing. And he was just a jogger. He wasn't, I don't know, doing criminal stuff. It would just be so crazy for Oz to lose by like double digits. I hope they can pull it together with some messaging and go hard with that. Oz did make a funny today because Fetterman was trashing Oz because I guess Oz was asked about how many houses he has, and he said a number, but he has like different homes and different properties or whatever. So it wasn't the right number that Fetterman thought or whatever. So he started trashing like, I don't know many Pennsylvanians who don't know how many homes they have, like he's so privileged. And Oz is like, bro, I bought my houses with my money. Like you've been living off your parents since like the age of 50. What kind of loser are you? Basically. And I was like, oh, you know what? Oz had some spice today. So I gave it to him, and I did post screen grab that and put it on my Facebook page if you haven't seen it. But I was like, oh, good for you, Oz. And he did say, when are we going to debate? And so like it seems like Fetterman's kind of dodging on that, which doesn't seem like he's quite recovered and all there. So I'm not surprised, but they really should have a debate. Oz better prep hard for it though, because the debate is when Kathy Barnett just really surged how she just sliced him up a bit. So hopefully he's prepared for that, but I don't even know if they're going to agree to it or not. Okay, let's move on to the Sam Harris stuff because we're going to be talking about this the bulk of the day. And it is really remarkable. So how much of it did I watch? I got into about 40 minutes before I had to stop. And so much of it, that part, it's about an hour and a half on this YouTube podcast. And he just really had so many interesting views. He did talk about the intellectual dark web, which he said was kind of more tongue in cheek. And because he was asked how it kind of fell apart. And he said, mostly he attributed to how people interpreted Trump, and he had just a really different view. And so he called for like censorship, open censorship on Trump. And other people didn't agree with that. And he's just like, it's a company, it's a business, etc. Which yes, it is, but they didn't really push back. They did push back and was like, it's kind of more like a utility, but there's a difference between Sam Harris because he started comparing his podcast to like, you can't tell me what to do with on my podcast, where someone wanted to tell me, you had to have Alex Jones or this person on the show. And it's like, but it's different when you're like a publisher and you're accountable for what you publish on the site versus the sort of protections that the government will give to a website that's social media where people post their own stuff, like on Facebook and Twitter. So they're going to act like different things, treat them like different things. Also with Twitter, though, there is obvious pressure, and obviously those pressures would have been different. Maybe, who knows, when Trump was in office. But the Biden administration is very cozy with people on Twitter. There's one person, and I'll have to maybe address the story tomorrow, who has evidence of people within the White House talking to Twitter about kicking him off the platform because they didn't want him on there. So these protections for free speech, like they're for the government not to impose upon us, and a private company can choose to do what they want to. But what do you do when the government starts acting in line with these companies and they start doing the bidding of the government? So that's something I think people need to ask me a little more honest about. But let's watch the first clip of Sam. I have 3 that I want to play. There were some more that I wanted to grab. I just didn't have the time, but and we probably won't have the time anyway. So let's start with the first one and go from there.
You're not going to get worse than Trump if you pick at random. And Hillary Clinton, for all of her flaws, was not worse than Trump. Joe Biden, we could have known Joe Biden was going to just be comatose in office, not worse than Trump, right? Kamala Harris, not worse. Like it's all, and again, it's not just a marginal call. It's just these are people who are normal politicians who are so much more constrained by predictable machinery, right? There's such less of an opportunity there to destroy institutions that we have to rely on, right? With any of those people in charge, including a random person in charge, a random person who's going to be terrified at the responsibility of the office and default to expert opinion, across the board.
So this was actually like toward the end of where I started watching it. So this is what's pretty crazy, that people really think that Trump is the worst, and no one is beyond that. I'm gonna play another clip. Maybe we'll go back to that one because there's some other things to unpack before we quite get there.
Hunter Biden, at that point, Hunter Biden literally could have had the corpses of children in his basement. I would not have cared, right? It's like there's nothing. First of all, it's Hunter Biden, right? It's not Joe Biden. But even if whatever scope of Joe Biden's corruption is, like if we could just go down that rabbit hole endlessly and understand that he's getting kickbacks from Hunter Biden's deals in Ukraine or wherever else, right, or China, it is infinitesimal compared to the corruption we know Trump is involved in. It's like a.
Hold on. I'm sure you all didn't gloss over the fact that he said Hunter Biden could have had the corpses of children on his laptop. Which, isn't too far-fetched because just how I've seen people react to like pro-choice stuff and abortion clinics and whatnot. So that's actually not too far-fetched of people ignoring that kind of stuff. But he cannot fathom something being worse. The possibility of something being worse that he's unaware of and doesn't know. He has no proof that there will never be anything worse than what Trump has done in his mind compared to the things that he knows about Trump. That's wild. That is wild. Now, what we know about Biden and Hunter and his son and the things that they're mixed up in, is there anything worse that you know about? How are they not worse than Trump? I don't understand that. And people can have a different opinion, but how is it possible that he cannot even fathom that there's a possibility that there's something worse, something that he doesn't know that could be worse? So people are like, what, corpses of dead children? Let's keep going.
Firefly to the sun, right? I mean, like there's just, it doesn't even stack up against Trump University, right? Trump University as a story is worse than anything that could be in Hunter Biden's laptop, in my view, right? Now that doesn't answer the people who say it's still completely unfair to not have looked at the laptop in a timely way and to have shut down the New York Post's.
Trump University. I oh my gosh. Isn't worse than, first of all, Biden, he's not talking. This is just happened. This is a fresh new posted thing. This isn't like a speculation thing in 2020, speculating about what might be on the laptop and how involved or not involved Hunter might be with Joe Biden. So we know that Biden interacted with Hunter's business partners. We know that they've had their finances intertwined, that his deals, I mean, we knew in 2020 about 10% for the big guy, but people wanted to ignore that. All these people came out and said it was Russian disinformation. There's a ton of shady stuff. Even like you can't question, you're not questioning how people paid for all this access to Hunter, like the Burisma stuff. Before the laptop came out, people were talking about him being on this board for Burisma. And Trump, when he got impeached originally, he saw Biden was bragging about getting a prosecutor fired in Ukraine, holding up money, like, you're not going to get this money unless you fire a prosecutor. That happened. We played the video. People have seen the video. That bleepity bleep, right? They released the money. That Joe Biden video. Okay? That prosecutor was looking into Burisma, Ukraine natural gas company that put Hunter Biden on the board. It didn't have like the qualifications to do something like that. Everyone knows that he gets certain positions and jobs because of proximity to his dad. And Hunter Biden, like from recovered like messages and stuff, he believes that his dad will do whatever he wants him to. That he has that kind of influence on him. And I don't know, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But they are intertwined. But what do all these people think that they're getting for that, buying with that sort of access, giving him all this money? Like, I know politicians do shady stuff all the time, but think about how high gas is, how much they want to force people into electric vehicles and stuff, knowing that Hunter Biden has worked with the Chinese to get like cobalt mines or whatever kind of stuff that they use for electric cars, and that he has dealings with that kind of stuff. Like the big conspiratorial stuff that's not so conspiratorial, that has real world effects on us right now. Now, yes, Trump University affected people, but they also argued that there are people who, I don't know, liked it or whatever. I don't know. It was a shady thing, but people knew about that going into having Trump be elected. So that's not new stuff. They suppressed all this information with Hunter Biden, and Biden lied about it, not convincingly either. He said, I don't have any dealings with my son's businesses. People thought that didn't make any sense. Because wouldn't you want to at least say, hey, let me know about this so we don't have some kind of crossover? But they did have crossover. They literally shared bank accounts. Joe Biden has accidentally paid for his hookers. So I just can't fathom that someone who thinks he's so smart is like, there can't even be a possibility that there's going to be something worse on there that's going to be worse than what we know about Trump. But I don't know. I guess it's on par with someone who's like, well, I know there's no God. Sorry, there's atheists in the chat, but I'm like, there's just such arrogance for no reason. With no evidence, to be that arrogant and entitled in your opinion. It's bizarre.
Twitter account like that. That's just a conspiracy. That's a left-wing conspiracy to deny the presidency to Donald Trump. Absolutely, it was. Absolutely, right. But I think it was warranted, right. And again, it's a coin toss as to whether or not
Sam, I'm sorry.
That particular piece.
I'm really sorry. I was the one that said we should move on, but you've just said something I really struggle with there, which is
the kids in the basement.
No, fuck the kids in the basement. I'm interested in democracy. You're saying you are content with a left-wing conspiracy to prevent somebody being democratically re-elected as president?
Well, no, I'm content. Well, but the thing is, it's just not left wing, right? So Liz Cheney is not left wing, right? Liz Cheney is doing.
So he said it was a left wing conspiracy, and then they pushed back, and then he just changed his mind. He's like, no, Liz Cheney's a part of it. Liz Cheney, that's not even like the same thing, though. The left wing conspiracy and suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story, and Twitter locking out, the New York Post, people not wanting their hands on to get the drive, even though you had people were like, I have the drive, I will give you the drive if you want to see the drive. Like Jack Posobiec was like constantly tweeting Jake Tapper and all this, like no one wanted to touch it. People are like, it's Russian disinformation. They had all these experts come on and sign it and say it was Russian disinformation. The White House was kind of denying, but not really denying it, because it was true. These people were confirming different emails, but they just didn't want this information out there. And so they just acted like it wasn't true to influence the election in a negative way. And Sam Harris thinks that's okay. And now he's bringing in Cheney for some reason. I don't think she has anything to do with that, to say, well, it's not a left-wing conspiracy, it's just a conspiracy. So he was confronted and he just changed his mind all of a sudden.
Everything
a
in her power
conspiracy to prevent somebody being democratically
it's not but there's nothing conspiracy. It's not. It was a conspiracy out in the open. But it doesn't matter if it was. It doesn't matter what part's conspiracy, what part's out in the open. I mean, I think it's like, if people get together and talk about what should we do about this phenomenon, if it's like, if there was an asteroid hurtling toward Earth, and we got in a room together with all of our friends and had a conversation about what we could do to deflect its course, right? Is that a conspiracy? Like some of.
Sam, that is like not the same thing. So then he just kind of starts downplaying like the significance of it being a conspiracy to thwart someone from being democratically elected. And someone was going through a thread on Twitter, posting these clips and having like sort of live reactions to it. And they noted that Sam Harris, who doesn't believe we have free will, like we're just, I guess, programmed to react in certain ways, but are we really using our free will to think this thing, to do this thing? Sam Harris doesn't really. So he pointed out, like, if you think that, what's really the difference in like stuffing ballot boxes versus, which Sam Harris hasn't accused. When he went on to defend the conspiracy thing, he's like, I'm not saying anyone stuffed ballots boxes or whatever, anything like that, and justified something like that. But they're like, with his sort of worldview, if people don't have free will, and it's, if you just trigger somebody and give them fake information so they will alter their vote, how is that really ethically different than someone literally going and changing a vote in a system? If people are programming you to change a vote in the system, especially with false information. I'm not saying I share that view. I'm just saying it's an interesting point of view, or an interesting point about his point of view. I don't know that Sam Harris would agree with that. Here's another clip.
Extreme than most people on the left. Like I do think at this point in history, you should be able to have a social media platform and exclude any specific group you want, and just say that's the way we do it, right? And if you don't like it, boycott us, right? So like I wouldn't have said this in 1964 when we have to pass a Civil Rights Act, but at this point, I think you should have the right to be an asshole who destroys your reputation and suffers the penalties in the marketplace of ideas, right? So I think if you want to just have a social media network for beautiful people, right, or people who are, guys who are over 6'2" and blonde hair and blue eyes, right, I can't get on. You should feel free to raise money for that enterprise, launch it, and I'll laugh when it fails, right? So like now under some construal, that kind of thing, is or should be illegal. If you're just a normal person on the left.
Now, and that went deeper into the conversation about Twitter and the censorship and why he felt it was fine and right for them to censor Trump. And he also in the interview, he talked about really he was like libertarian, like don't tell the government shouldn't be able to tell you what to do, etc. Blah blah blah. But again, people have terms of services. If they want to limit people, they should be able to like push them out or what. If I agree on to that to some regard, but they need to be honest about what their platforms are, and they're not. They obviously rule one-sidedly, which the host, pushed back on him and was like, they are obviously targeting people they don't like, and it's not like just Trump who they kicked off. And Sam Harris said, well, when Trump got kicked off and he violated a lot of terms of services, he had this whole like idea of what January 6th was and how he got, why Twitter kicked them off. But I covered on my website when Trump got kicked off and why Twitter said he got kicked off, because they could have gone through probably old tweets and been like, you harass this person, you harass this person, you harass this. They could have probably gone through like a flurry of old stuff, but that's not why he got kicked off. When Trump announced, I'm not going to be at the inauguration, they're like, you know what? He could be signaling people to attack because he's not going. And then they got rid of him. And there was also a tweet that was like, MAGA will be respected. And they're like, these two tweets combined. It was really a really weak reason why they announced the evidence of why they decided to get rid of Trump. It wasn't a call to arms, wasn't a call to action, wasn't like rallying people to go do harm, which Twitter also ignores a lot of people who call to arms to do harm. Granted, it's a different gravity when it's the president. However, that's not why they said they kicked him off. At least the tweets that they signaled. And you can go back on blacktnews.com. I have them marked in the article that I wrote about. But they didn't have a good explanation, a really good explanation, a legit explanation. They just wanted him off. Again, they could have just gone through like his old non-presidential tweets and probably just found some stuff like, oh, you said something super rude here to Kirsten Stewart or Rosie O'Donnell or somebody, and just been like, we have like a list, you got to go. They could have did that, but that's not what they did. That's not what they did. And I don't think they care that maybe it was just fine in their own minds. But I'm like, who would read that tweet and go like, oh gosh, he's not going to the inauguration, which I wouldn't have guessed that he would have gone anyway, and been like, we should probably go there. Because Twitter announcing that Trump is signaling it's safe to attack because he won't be there. It's like, didn't you just, it kind of sounds like you just put that idea in people's heads, which obviously didn't happen. It does sound like you're putting ideas in people's heads, or trying to, or saying what you're secretly hoping. I don't know. So if Twitter wants to be a platform and not a publisher, it needs to act like a platform and not a publisher. Now, Sam Harris saying that people should be able to do what they want and openly discriminate against people and then let the free market, dictate, that is a more libertarian position. And there are libertarians who like, we shouldn't even have something like the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and people should be just judged on, freedom of association. Which it doesn't seem like Sam would go that far, which I'm curious how much he'd be willing to allow racism, because people are like, not racism, discrimination. Because they're like, racism is bad. Of course, everyone doesn't agree with that. Actually, people use racism to their own ends. They just won't call it racism. But is it okay to discriminate against people's ideology? Because Sam also talked about how he, referenced how he used to be like, oh, Christianity and Christian nationalism is such a big threat, because he did go on a rant about how he doesn't really like Liz Cheney and that she's a Christian radical, but he likes her now, or respects what she's doing against Trump or whatever, supports her in that way, and believes that he's supporting her in a nonpartisan way, is what he explained it. But my religious views, obviously I'm a Black person, my religious views are far more important to me and make up who I am way more than my race. Way hands down, way more important. Way more important. So if I express a political view that is a reflection of who I see myself in Christ, would that be okay to be discriminated against on Twitter? Why is that okay on Twitter, but like it's not okay to discriminate against race? So something I'd like to see Sam kind of dive deeper in, but perhaps I don't know if maybe that seems so strange to him that I would say something like that. But hands down, like my identity in Christ. And everyone has beliefs that they operate off of. It doesn't need to be religious. I think his beliefs are, for someone who's an atheist, he's very, very religious in his sort of dogma. His Trump derangement syndrome is outrageous. I want to go back to that first clip that he talked about when he said he can't imagine anyone else being worse than Trump. And so before he started talking about Liz Cheney and what she's doing and the routes that people went to get Trump not elected. He really doesn't think there's anyone else who would be worse than Donald Trump. And he described him, I think, as like a black hole. He doesn't think Biden has done anything worse or Clinton could have done anything worse. And he talked about protecting institutions and the damage that Trump could do to institutions. Now, this is what I don't understand. And he talked about Trumpism being a cult, and pretty early on, I don't know if it was so early on, but I think it might have been like 20 minutes in, but he talked about Trumpism and how people like Trump, and it's very cultish of personality. He's like, you might get a few people who are rational, like Peter Thiel, to explain why he's supporting Trump, but he said most people it's just like a personality cult thing, which I'm like, how many people has he actually talked to and listened to their reasons? I agree. There's a lot of people who are like, Trump is great. Trump is, and it's more like a cultish sort of following degree, like the love for him. But that's some people. That's not the bulk of the people who voted for him the first time and not the second time either. Which the more they attack this man, the more radical allegiance people do feel. So they can just tone down their TDS, but they can't help it. But I knew people who voted for Trump who just wanted to give the finger basically to the establishment. There are people I talked to who I was utterly surprised who supported Trump or who at least voted for him. There are people I know who don't like the man in the least bit, but think he was a good president and deserved a second term. There's a lot of people who aren't just going by his personality. There's people who don't like his personality, but they bought into what he sold and what they believe that he could accomplish for them. It's that simple. It's that simple. And it's amazing to me that he could reference people who support Trump in like a cult-like following when Democrats do that all the time. All the time. Vote blue no matter who. Like, you know that saying? I saw a video yesterday of somebody was checking this black guy who was a Republican, and they're like, well, Joe Biden's only been in office for so long, he can only do so much. And he's just like, why do people give such excuses to this man? And he just started explaining all the stuff that Biden did from day one and how much harm he has done and how much he's decided to do for other communities and hasn't really helped the black community in his opinion, the commentator doing the video. And he's like, I just don't understand this allegiance to Biden. And I didn't understand the allegiance to him like now, and a lot of people dislike Biden, but they'll defend him even though he's doing a very bad job. Or on the campaign trail, people will be like, Trump is so racist, blah, blah. I'm like, are you like ignoring so much on purpose? I mean, the shirt that I made, I'm going to show it really quick. The denounce white supremacy defeat Joe Biden shirt. There's a list of the some racist stuff that he's done right on the back of the shirt. And I'm like, I wrote an article. I'm like, why does the left ignore Biden's racism? And if you type in Trump racist, there's like a list or something from Vox or BuzzFeed or somebody. And if you go through that list, I'm like, okay, that's not racist. That's not racist. Joe Biden say vote for, if you even think about not voting for me, you're not black. You can say it was a joke. I don't think it was a joke, but I mean, are you going to literally not be black? No, but I don't think it was a joke. And it was racist regardless. That's racist. And there's other examples beyond that. Obviously, there was a whole entire list on that shirt. But I didn't understand why people wanted to defend it so much. And then Joe Biden, he like kind of blamed it on Charlemagne when he said that on the Breakfast Club. Because he's like, well, he was just joking. He was, being smart with me. So I basically, like, it was his fault and he just gave it back to him. But if you watch it, Charlemagne said, hey, we'd love to have you back. I got some more questions for you. And then Joe Biden said, got more questions. Well, I'll tell you what, if you have any trouble deciding between me and Trump, you ain't black. And then he just kind of smiled at the camera. And Charlemagne's like, it ain't got nothing to do about, that. It's like whoever's just best for my community. And he's like, come on, man. I was endorsed by the NAACP every time I've run, which is a lie. So in defending his record, he immediately started spewing out lies. And I think there was at least 2 in that little rant that he gave. I think he listed like 4 things. I think 2 of them weren't even true. So, but people were like, no, that was just a joke. Okay. It's what they believe, though. We played the video yesterday, the recording of Tim Scott and Barry Weiss talking about in New York Times how they didn't want to post an op-ed until they ran it by Chuck Schumer. And Tim Scott just started talking about how if you are a black Republican, black conservative, they just want to delegitimize you. And I know that firsthand. They want to delegitimize you because they don't want you to be seen as a legitimately black person. You are a person who happens to have brown skin, perhaps African ancestry, but you are not a legitimate person who they see as black. You're culturally white or something. You're not culturally black. You're not the real black that they allow you to be. But anyway, I'm gonna play that last clip one more time.
You're not going to get worse than Trump if you pick at random. And, Hillary Clinton, for all of her flaws, was not worse than Trump. Joe Biden, we could have known Joe Biden was going to just be comatose in office, not worse than Trump, right? Kamala Harris, not worse. Like it's all, and again, it's not just a marginal call. It's just, these are people who are normal politicians who are so much more constrained by predictable machinery, right? There's such less of an opportunity there to destroy institutions that we have to rely on.
So Democrats are advocating to destroy institutions now. Okay, so they want to kill the filibuster. They want to pack the court. They don't get what their way. They don't like the things that conservatives have been ruling on. They want to pack the court. And then to do that, they got to get rid of the filibuster. And after they get rid of the filibuster and they pack the court, they want to pass things like the Equality Act. Oh, that doesn't sound so nice, equality. They want to be able to overrule your religious liberties with the Equality Act. So there's that. There's a lot of not great stuff in there beyond even like the religious liberty thing, but they also want to pass a bill about voting rights. And in the Voting Rights Act, they will supersede a bunch of state laws to make the voting process more centralized, which Obama in 2016 noted that elections are hard to rig in America because it is so decentralized and so much state to state to state. It's not impossible, but it's very, very hard to cheat. So why would we want our federal government taking on more of that responsibility, if not to make it easier for them to get the results that they wanted. They're trying to make a bunch of moves in it seems like attempt to make sure that they either stay the ruling party or make it so that even if they're not the ruling party, it won't matter. When you have a Justice Department and the White House conspiring with the school board associations to call parents terrorists, you know, when you use the LGBT community as a strong arm so you can, I don't know, wage war on folks who won't bow down to ideologies, when you use OSHA to force in mandates that don't make sense so you can obtain more power over people. It seems how are these things not ruining institutions when you want to have disinformation boards, when you have people in the White House contacting Twitter and these organizations saying, hey, we want you to get rid of this person on the platform. And when they get folks on TikTok and to tout their messages, be like, hey, gas isn't high because of Biden, gas is high because of Putin. And they're having phone calls with celebrities and influencers to keep poisoning the well and the minds of people who they hope go out and vote. How is all of this not contributing to ruining our institutions? Or I guess not. They want to tear down some safeguards in our institutions. They want to keep institutions, but they just want to Frankenstein them into these horrible monsters that serve their needs and their goals. And Trump, it kind of seems like Sam Harris is more comfortable with evil if it's like as long as it's not a chaotic evil, as long as it's like a controlled sort of evil. It's fine if it's Hillary. It's fine if it's Biden, or he trusts the people around Biden to hold up the institutions. And it seemed like Trump is too much of a wild card for him, doing his own sort of thing. But that's not true, because he is like a wild man, don't get me wrong, but there was all these people who fought against him every step of the term. If he did something people didn't like, his White House was not a well-oiled machine. There was leaks everywhere. You had Milley, who was like going behind his back and talking to China and all this other kind of stuff that was like not appropriate. And people were like, yeah, that's good. He got impeached twice. To act like he got sued a lot over things that he should have been sued over. Trump had like the keys, but he had to fight all these people, including this propaganda against him about being some kind of Russian agent, people working to undermine his presidency. How are all those things not bad? But Trump is like the crazy man. But it goes to show you, though, that he's not as big of a threat as people say, because there's all these powers that have worked against him. One of the things that freaked me out the most at the prospect of Hillary Clinton winning, especially when I was reading those WikiLeaks emails, Podesta emails, is how cozy the press were with her. I talked about some of that the other day and read like some of the examples from old stories. But it freaked me out. I'm like, this is going to be too much power on one side in one direction. They have everything in the palm of their hands. And it just was too dangerous to me, especially since like she committed those crimes with the emails, and they're like, nah, it's not enough. No reasonable person's going to prosecute you. And just seemed like there was no justice, and these people be able to reign utterly in supreme. Do you guys know where the vast right wing conspiracy theory came from? That saying that Hillary Clinton still will say to this day. Do you know where that came from? And by the way, you had a CNN host, Anderson Cooper, who uttered those words in a question in 2016 during a debate to Hillary Clinton. I'm like, do you still believe there's vast right-wing conspiracy theory? The vast right-wing conspiracy theory was Clinton tiddling around with people, and the women or whoever, like in the White House and other stuff like that. And they're like, this is a right-wing conspiracy theory. Obviously not. Obviously not. So there's this phrase about all these conspiracy theories from the right wing that was started by them, pushed by Clinton and those folks over something that was true, over something that was happening, and they still use that line to this day. They have been pushers of misinformation forever. And the media is just like, oh, it's those people on the right that are so bad. So someone on the right side of the aisle becoming president, whether it's Trump or DeSantis or Haley or whoever runs, which I'd be, if it's not Trump or DeSantis, I'd be really shocked if it wasn't one of those two people. The levers of power, they may have power, but there's all these checks and balances, especially the press. When Obama was in the White House and they weaponized certain institutions like the IRS, for example, and the media just like adored him. They were mad at him when they found out he was spying on them. They were like, oh, that's a scandal. There were other scandals. You just care about that one because he picked on you. And moving from his administration to Trump's administration, how they spied and did shady stuff. I don't understand how that's not more alarming to Sam, because they can pull that stuff off. They can pull that stuff off, weaponizing these institutions to a point where we don't live in a democracy. We're living in a fiction of it. It's not really democracy, it's constitutional republic, whatever, but you know what I'm trying to say. And just an illusion. If we don't, so he was good for the censorship. He was okay. He thought it was the ends justifies the means as far as censoring this Hunter Biden laptop story, because at the end of the day, he got the result that he wanted. If people can do that and manipulate people to that degree, ultimately people still have to go and decide to cast their ballot. But if they've been conditioned to make this choice and they don't actually have the information and it was purposely hidden from them, was that fair? I have this saying when I talk about the election. I say that Trump legitimately lost a rigged election. That is what I say. I don't, people have different ways that they phrase it, bigger conspiracies or whatever than I have, but I say he legitimately lost a rigged election. That is what I say. Because Time Magazine put out like how we saved democracy. So if you're okay with the institutions, how they're moving, that's one thing. But you see such a push for more government. I don't trust Biden when he keeps talking about like, we want to help you pay for your childcare and we want to and pre-education for your kids. I'm like, the more money you put in the government's hands and get money from the government, the more control they have over your life. We should not trust them. We should not trust them. I especially don't trust Biden with the kids. I don't. They don't do things from the kindness of their hearts. It is not cool that they can pass an Inflation Reduction Act knowing it's just Build Back Better with different skin. And Bill Gates, by the way, called up Joe Manchin and twisted his arm into supporting it again. That's what happened. Bill Gates lobbied for it because he's some kind of climate weirdo and wants certain things done for only God knows one reason. But he is rich as sin, and he doesn't care about what sort of real world implications there will be for everyone else. So they're bragging like, oh, we're going to have all these subsidies for all this stuff that we want and the green stuff, and our friends have these companies and blah blah blah, and they're just transferring your money, even though you are nickeling and diming your way to the gas station. Is that okay? Is that not wrong? Was we have to pass the bill to find out what's in it wrong? When Obama lied about you can keep your doctor if you like your doctor, and you can keep your plan if you like your plan, knowing he was lying. Is that okay? For the purpose so they could, and Obama knew he could just to lie about it, because once people have an entitlement, they don't want to get rid of it. So Republicans and stuff, they like shaved off some of Obamacare or whatever, and Trump, at least they got rid of the mandate and stuff, but to some, it still exists, but it's obviously not great. But they want to keep going, and they will keep fighting until they get socialized universal health care, socialized medicine, universal health care. That's their end game. And these people keep paving the way to not have institutions that are good for the betterment of our democracy, but just good for the institutions and the people who will run them. So I'm just floored by Sam Harris and people who think that Trump is somehow worse than the monster they're making. Because at the end of the day, you cannot like Trump and his temperament and his personality. And he's competent in a lot of things, but as Bolton said, like he's not like coup level kind of person. Democrats have been running a long con on the American people. Trump is the least of your worries, sir. But he just can't see it. He just can't see it. Okay, really quickly, I'm gonna move on. I said that Brian Stelter is out at CNN. The T-Post Millennial is reporting that Stelter said in a statement with NPR that he's grateful for the show and his team's examination of the media, truth, and stories that shape our world. It was a rare privilege to lead a weekly show focused on the press at the time when it's never been more consequential. Stelter said. Stelter came to CNN from the New York Times as the nation's top media reporter. He departs CNN, an impeccable broadcaster, said. Amy Intelise, CNN's executive vice president for talent and content development, to NPR. We are proud of what Brian and his team accomplished over the years, and we're confident their impact and influence will long outlive the show. I'm sure they will, but not in a good way. In June, News Cycle Media's John Nicolsa reported that Stelter was down to weeks, if not days, left at the network. He is everything that reminds the new owners of Zucker era they desperately want to get past, a source said. Nicolsa claimed the info came from an anonymous source who was also management is confident Stelter is the one sharing the internet pushback to fellow media reporters while simultaneously stirring discontent within the ranks. Serious calls for Stelter's firing began in February of this year. Stelter was an ally and former CNN President Jeff Zucker, who had to resign after it was revealed he had been having a prolonged affair with a married coworker. An anonymous source at CNN said at the time he is allegedly our top media reporter, yet failed to report on the scoop that everyone in the office knew. And if he was to say he didn't know, he is truly terrible at his job. According to the Daily Wire, Stelter's show, The Reliable Sources, had its worst rated episode weeks ago when it reached only 580,000 viewers, the smallest audience since September 15th, 2019. CNN is already known for its low ratings. They are known for their low ratings, not being a news show, that's funny, and had a huge setback when it was online service CNN Plus failed. That was funny. About almost immediately after its launch. I wonder what one guy who left Fox News it's Chris, right? But glasses, older gentleman, black hair. I can't think of his name. Very famous guy. I don't know why I can't think of him. He did the first debate with Trump and Biden. Someone in the comments, let me but he left Fox and had some words or whatever, and he was supposed to have a CNN Plus show, and then it imploded, and he made this deal with Zucker basically before Zucker got ousted. So I wonder what they're all thinking over at the network, and if anyone else is on the chopping block. But Stelter's gone, and Chris Wallace, thank you so much, Chris Wallace. I wonder what he's thinking about all this, and he might be glad that they're cleaning up some people at CNN, and having someone like Chris Wallace there in as far as trying to paint a more serious news cast will probably ultimately do them better, but they're still gonna have to rein in some people and rein in some particular talking points, because there's people who you would think could have like a more balanced sort of opinion sometimes, maybe, who just still aren't there because their Trump derangement syndrome is still high. So we'll see if CNN can bounce back any sort of ratings, and but more importantly, gain some more public trust and not be seen as MSNBC 2.0. Lastly, the AP is reporting that Planned Parenthood is to spend a record $50 million in the midterm elections. Planned Parenthood, the nation's leading reproductive health care provider. By the way, by the time you're pregnant, reproduction has happened. So these euphemisms are insane. And anyway, the abortion rights advocacy organization, that's what it is, an abortion factory also, plans to spend a record $50 million ahead of November's midterm elections, pouring money into contests where access to abortion will be on the ballot. The effort, which breaks the group's previous $45 million spending record set in 2020, comes about 2 months after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, except blah, blah, blah. And it goes on to say, Planned Parenthood says that spending will help remind voters in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, what's at stake, in a bid to drive turnout by Democratic and independent voters. Who wins in these midterm elections will determine whether a state has access to abortion and potentially determine whether we will face a national abortion ban, said Jenny Lawson, the executive director of Planned Parenthood Votes. We will be clear about who is on which side. So I'm one of those states. That they are targeting very hard. And my governor, Gretchen Whitmer, is very, very pro abortion. She actually, her team said some stuff against pregnancy crisis centers. She vetoed some bills that was supposed to fund them, even fund a program that was supposed to advertise adoption over abortion. You know, you're demonic when you're screw that, I'm vetoing that. So these people are very clearly protecting the institution of abortion. And I know there's people who watch and follow my page who aren't quite on the same page as I am, aggressively as I am on this issue. But you know that's messed up. You know that's messed up when people have an issue with pregnancy crisis centers, when people have issues, when a lot of people will be desperate, they think it is not good when you are of the opinion that the best option for you is to take someone else's life. And maybe you convince yourself, well, it's not really a life. You twist your head somewhere to get to that conclusion. The baby that comes out at 9 months was the same baby that started at conception. Same person. Only difference is time to develop. So if you wander into a pregnancy crisis and they say, hey, we will help you. We will give you parenting classes. We will give you diapers. We will give you strollers. We will do all these things to help meet your goals and needs. Do you need some babysitting? Do you need some help with schooling? I think that's great. But they're like, no, you don't bother women. Don't bother women. We should be doing our darndest. If you're going to say that it is a necessary evil, and someone has to take someone else's life, it should be imperative that there are hoops to jump through. That people should have conversations and let them know, hey, there are really some other options and we would like to help you explore them. Whitmer was like, nah, screw that. Veto. So we have an abortion ban. It's not legal according to our constitution. She's been fighting that. She's trying to get our left-wing court to just say throw out the constitution. But there is right now there is a ballot initiative. They have like over 700,000 signatures. I didn't read the language of the bill till today. And some pro-life activists are claiming that it needs to be thrown out. And they were saying because it looks like gibberish, and they had an example and some of the words were like running together. In my head, I'm like, I don't think they're going to do that. And I don't know about that. That kind of sounds kind of lame. In my opinion, I was like, I don't know about that. So when I actually read it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is really bad. And I don't know if they can fix it or not fix it before it goes out on the ballot. And I don't, and it would be in our constitution. I don't think it, the way that it is written, I mean, I don't agree with it anyway, but I mean, the way that it just runs on all the words together, all the letters together with no spacing, it's not good. And you want it to be, you're talking about changing the constitution, adding an amendment that's going to allow abortion up until viability. And by the way, they changed the definition of viability. So fetal viability viability just means you can survive in the environment you're in. So it's a very broad term. But when you're talking about fetal viability, it's you're able to survive outside the womb. This bill says that you have to have like a significant chance at survival without extreme medical intervention or something. So I'm like, that really narrows the definition of fetal viability, which I don't think is a good standard anyway. Viability doesn't make sense to me because I'm like, at that point, it's still inside of you. So if you don't want it and your bodily autonomy is the most important thing, why would it matter? Why would it matter? It just doesn't make sense to me. It's just a weird standard. But 24 weeks is obviously so developed. All the major organs have formed. You know, you can feel pain at that point. I mean, people argue that it's earlier, but you know, at that point, yeah. If you have a daughter, her eggs are in her uterus. So whatever future grandchild you might have, that potential is already in her. I mean, it's so far along. It's brutal. It's brutal. But you can go past that with abortion. And they said that you can do it if you get a medical profession, medical professional. It doesn't say doctor. No, it says healthcare professional, not even a medical a healthcare professional to determine like if it affects your mental health or your physical health. So not the woman's going to die. Not necessarily that she's losing her mind. When they say mental health, it's very broad and it includes so many different things. In some definitions, they even have things like, well, a lot of things contribute to that. What's their financial status? So if you find a person who has a vested interest in abortion, and is like, yeah, I think you should be able to have this late-term abortion, that would be permissible. And people are like, people just make, for medical reasons, late-term abortions. That's not true. It's not true. People do it because they kind of drag their feet, could have been financial reasons, a relationship could have failed. Reasons why people get abortions early are the same reasons people will get them later. So it's a pretty radical bill. It's pretty broad as far as like the exemptions for after 24 weeks, but up to 24 weeks, that's not even where the country is at. Like the Harvard did a poll and I think it was 37%. I'm sorry if this is a little wrong, but I think 37% said no abortion after at all, unless it's like life of the mother, rape and incest. And then 20-something% said that it shouldn't be after 15 weeks. So those two numbers combined, you already have a majority of people technically agree with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, because Roe v. Wade could not exist with the Dobbs case that was at 15 weeks. So it's a pretty radical bill in Michigan. I don't know what all is happening in other states as far as their abortion laws, what people are fighting against. But of course, there are big races in Arizona, and Pennsylvania. We talked a little bit about Pennsylvania earlier, and in other states going on. So there 50 million. We again, people use money to make up the difference in what they can't do on the ground. In radio ads, mailers, things that people see on TV, social media, really targeted ads, they do make a difference in an election. They do, but they're not going to be as important as you going up to your neighbor, people in church, and really getting folks together and saying, hey, maybe you're not cool with abortion, but you know this thing that could be on the ballot. It's not 100% it's going to be on the ballot right now, but it's probably likely. They're probably going to let it go through. If you vote yes for this to be, and I don't know how they're going to word it, if it's going to be yes or no, whatever, but if you approve of this change in the Constitution, Michigan Constitution, you know you're like participating and signing their death warrant. You could say it like that if you want to, but people need to realize that they are signing their name onto that. You could say, well, you're signing on to their choice, the choice to electively take a life. If you think there needs to be a better abortion bill with other sort of exceptions, you can make that case. But people need to understand how dire it is and how developed a baby is at that point. Now, majority of abortions take place before that, but even a baby at 10 weeks is so developed. Just look at it, go look at a chart and just look at fetal development week by week, pictures of the development. And keep in mind, it's the same baby. I mean, you really want to say someone's not human because of a week? A week? So anyway, there's a lot that I have planned that I'm going to do, participate in, as far as getting information out, as far as writing compelling things, helping other people be able to, I guess, sell this message with more conviction. A lot of good videos that I'm going to put out. If you like what I do here at Black Tea News, I encourage you to support at blacktnews.com/donate. It's imperative that we fight back. It's imperative that we fight back. And I'm already in the fight, engaged in the fight, very passionate about the fight. But we can do more. So if you want to help, you can go to blacktnews.com, hit that donate button. I appreciate it, whether it's $10, $20, whatever. If you can't do that, when I do post things like, well, in general, but dealing with this topic, I appreciate you reading and you sharing and you tagging and sending it to other people when I do videos on these topics. And I'm going to do ones that aren't very long, that people will not, their eyes won't gloss over, and some that are kind of more philosophical. I appreciate you sharing those things and tagging people and encouraging them to watch it and to change their mind. And I appreciate people who message me saying that they're more encouraged to and empowered to speak about these things and have moved the goalposts. Well, not move the goalposts, but have changed their minds on these issues as well. That I'm so pumped when someone messages me and says they are now pro-life because they watch my content. Biggest compliment I can get. Besides, well done, like good and faithful service, but I have to wait till I'm dead for that one, So, if I appreciate you guys for watching, sharing, subscribing, liking, all that good stuff. And we have to continue the conversation. Abortion is largely survived because of euphemisms and information. Again, the AP article, everyone referring it to reproductive rights, like reproduction's already happened. or how they say that it is healthcare, or bringing up miscarriages. Someone asked me the other day, like, hey, like people keep bringing up miscarriages and stuff. There's people who claim that their miscarriages are abortion and spontaneous, but we're talking about induced abortions. Someone told me that the numbers that we talk about, the big numbers, are mostly miscarriages. I'm like, that's not true. That's not true. Like in 2019, there was nearly 1 million elective, well, not elective, I'm sorry, induced abortions, which means deliberate, not miscarriages. Do you know how many people that is? That's like taking the population of Detroit, Grand Rapids, and my hometown of Pontiac, wiping all the people off the planet. That's how many people that is. So there's just a ton of misinformation. And we got to fight back. And that's one reason why I do what I do. And I appreciate you all being here on the journey. I am long over and I'm going to get going. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about tomorrow, as always. God bless you guys.